Hey, what's up, guys? Gurvir Romana here for Game Changer Performance. We got John Peel in today. He's a third-year slot receiver for the Niagara Raiders of the Canadian Junior Football League. We're nearing the end of our off-season training with John. 2 more weeks left till we start preseason training. The goal of the off-season training is to increase his base level fitness through high volume and moderate intensity training. Since we're getting to the end of our off-season training, we're going to bump up the intensity for this phase as we're looking to have a smooth transition into preseason training. That being said, here's a day one lower body lift. Check it out. Before getting into the workout, we're going to have John do a warm-up. Warm-up is essential to a good program as it will increase not only his core body temperature, but also increase blood flow to the muscles. This can lead to improvements in performance while potentially reducing the risk of injury. John's going to start off here by rolling out each of his quads, spending a little bit of time working through any trouble spots he may have. To roll out his glutes, we're going to get John to cross one leg over the other and then sit down on the foam roller with that side. Again, slowly working through any trouble spots he may have. Finally, we get John to finish off foam rolling with his hamstring and his calves. Next, we're going to have John bike at a low intensity for 5 minutes. This is done to increase his heart rate, core body temperature, as well as promote blood flow. We like to use an assault bike over a stationary bike just to get the upper body involved as well. Once John is off the bike, he's going to perform some mobility and activation exercises. The goal of mobility drills are to increase range of motion, which will again increase his performance while decreasing the risk of injury. However, what we don't want to do is hold the stretch for too long, as static stretching can have a negative effect on performance. Keeping that in mind, hold mobility exercise for a maximum of 5 seconds. We're going to start with walking knee hugs into a lunge for 10 yards. Then we got walking quad stretch for 10 yards. To add more of a stretch, go ahead and raise your opposite arm in the air while slightly leaning forward. Next, we got a glute stretch into a side-to-side lunge for 10 aside. We got world's greatest stretch for 10 aside. Another great mobility drill for the thoracic spine as well as the hips. To perform this exercise, get in a comfortable lunge position. From there, use your inside arm to reach overhead, following your hand with your eyes the entire time. After that, we got prisoner squats for 10 reps. The reason we like prisoner squats is because it forces the athlete to be in thoracic extension, working on poor upper back mobility. Single leg RDL to knee hike. The key here is to focus on contracting your glutes as you transition to the knee hike. Great activation exercise while working on an athlete's balance. We're going to end off with banded monster walks for 10 yards aside. Another great exercise to get the glutes activated before your lifts. You'll notice John's not taking huge strides laterally, instead taking short choppy steps. Speed is not a concern for this exercise. Rather, we're looking for good quality movements. We're going to start with deadlifts as a main compound exercise for today's lift. Deadlifts are an awesome exercise to build posterior chain strength as well as teaching hip hinging to athletes, both of which are crucial for running and jumping. To set up, have the athlete stand shoulder width apart with the bar in line with their midfoot. Make sure they keep a neutral spine and keeping their shoulders above their hips and their hips above their knees. What you don't want to see is the athlete jerking the bar off the ground. So once they have the setup, cue them to push through the ground instead of pulling the bar up. This will lead to a smooth pull. If the athlete is struggling to hip hinge, try out this exercise. Grab a dowel rod and have the athlete place it on their back along their spine. There are 3 points of contact with the dowel we are looking for: the head, upper back, and low back. From here, instruct the athlete to unlock their knees, then bend forward as if they were deadlifting without losing any points of contact. This will teach the athlete to bend at the hips with keeping a neutral spine. Perform this as a movement prep drill, 10 reps. After John performs his 5 deadlifts, we're going to superset that with 3 resisted band broad jumps. This is a concept of contrast training, where you perform a heavy resistance exercise with an explosive exercise with a similar motor pattern. In this case, hip hinging. This causes post-activation potentiation, which can increase explosive power. John's going to rest for 2 minutes after his jumps before he begins to do his next set of deadlifts. After 5 supersets, John's going to move on to reverse lunges. Good exercise for athletes who need to accelerate a lot in their sport, as it mimics the action you take in the first steps of sprinting. Also, it's good to add in unilateral exercises into programming, as it will improve the balance as well as any imbalances between the two sides. Keys for this exercise: maintain an upright posture as you take your step back, stop just before your knee hits the ground, and push through the lead foot as you stand back up. John's going to do 4 sets of 6 reps on each leg at moderate intensity with 90 seconds rest in between. The next exercise is the single leg stability ball hamstring curl. We aren't huge fans of doing a lot of isolation exercises with athletes. We were more focused on training movements rather than muscles. However, the hamstring is an exception as it is a very susceptible muscle to injury in athletes that require to sprint. The reason we like using the stability ball version because it requires the athletes to isometrically contract their hamstring at their hips while concentrically contracting them at their knees. The keys here are to keep your hips up throughout the movement and follow a 4:01 tempo, so a 4-second controlled eccentric with an explosive concentric. If you're unable to perform the single leg variation, you can always start off with 2 legs and work your way down. The last movement is a farmer's walk. You can use dumbbells if you don't have a trap bar, but you're limited with how heavy you can go. Carries are good to perform for increases in core strength and posture stability, while also being a great grip exercise. John's going to do 5 sets of 20 total yards with 60-second rest in between. Right after John was done his last set of farmer's walk, we got him to walk around for about 5 minutes until he felt his heart rate had gone down. Then we're going to get John to do some static stretching. We'll get John to start off stretching his posterior hip, as we did a lot of posterior chain work. We're going to start off with the pigeon stretch. Next, we're going to move on to the piriformis stretch. Is really effective at opening up the posterior part of the hips. To perform it, have the athletes down on all fours. Then get them to cross one leg over the other. Then lean back into the leg that was crossed. They should be feeling a deep stretch in their glutes. Now we're going to focus on opening up the anterior hip. We're going to get John to hold the sunrise stretch for 30 seconds. Remember to cue your athlete to take deep breaths throughout their static stretching. Continuing with the anterior hip, we're going to get John to hold his couch stretch for 30 seconds aside.
Straight out.
After that, we'll get John to hold a hamstring stretch 30 seconds aside. Finally, we're going to end off with an abductor stretch, again holding 30 seconds aside. You can sink your hips back and start reaching forward with your hands for a deeper stretch.